My father-in-law stared straight into my eyes and told me I should feel thankful that they were allowing me to sleep in their garage. At that moment I was holding his grandchild in my arms, his own flesh and blood, 8 months old, with her father's eyes and my stubborn chin. Yet this man, standing there in a $3,000 suit in his perfectly maintained backyard, expected me to say thank you for a cot placed beside the lawn mower. My name is Samantha Reed. I am 29 years old, and about 3 months ago I made what turned out to be the worst decision of my life. I moved into my in-laws' house after my husband, Ryan, was deployed to Germany. When Ryan first mentioned the idea, it seemed almost reasonable at the time. He would be overseas for 14 months, and we had a 5-month-old baby. His parents owned a large house with 3 spare bedrooms sitting empty. His mother, Karen, even cried when she offered the arrangement. She told me she simply wanted to help and insisted that family always takes care of family. What she conveniently left out was that I would become their unpaid maid, their target for frustration, and apparently their personal ATM machine. I gave up the apartment Ryan and I shared so we could save more money for the home we hoped to buy together someday. Ryan and I had been married for 2 years, and life finally felt like it was beginning to stabilize. In our joint account we had saved $47,000, which was enough for a down payment on a modest starter home once he returned. Then I moved into the Mitchell household. You know the kind of house I am talking about. The front is decorated with large columns that serve absolutely no structural purpose. There is a wide circular driveway that exists purely so the owners can show off. It is the sort of place that loudly announces, "We have money," while quietly hinting that a large portion of that money probably lives on credit cards. Still, from the outside it looked impressive, and I would soon learn that appearances were the only thing that truly mattered to the Mitchell family. The first week passed without any obvious problems. Karen showed me to a comfortable guest room. David helped carry my bags inside the house. Ashley, Ryan's older sister, even arrived with a casserole. For a brief moment I wondered if maybe my private doubts about them had been unfair. By the second week, the atmosphere began to change. Karen mentioned that the guest room was normally reserved for visits from her sister. She asked if I would mind moving to the area above the garage for a little while, just temporarily. That so-called space turned out to be unfinished storage with a camping cot and a small heater that performed about as effectively as a birthday candle during a blizzard. I am fairly certain I could have stored ice cream up there without needing a freezer, but I kept telling myself the situation was only temporary. Then they took my car. Well, technically they persuaded me to let them keep it somewhere safe. Karen claimed there had been several break-ins around the neighborhood. She also pointed out that I had no real reason to drive anywhere, because everything I needed was supposedly right there at the house. And I, running on almost no sleep after endless nights with a fussy baby, handed over my keys like a complete fool. I have not driven a car in 3 months. I also have not had access to our bank account during that time. David managed to add himself to the account, and then informed me that I would receive a weekly allowance of $40 to cover both myself and a baby. Have you seen the price of formula recently? I could probably write an entire horror novel based solely on the cost of diapers. The brand of diapers that did not give Emma a rash cost about $28 for a single box. That meant I had roughly $12 left for food, so I began skipping meals to make sure my daughter never had to go without. I ended up losing 15 pounds that I could not really afford to lose in the first place. My phone was also switched onto their family plan, supposedly for convenience. What they failed to explain was that this arrangement allowed them to see nearly everything I did on that phone. The one time I attempted to send Ryan an email explaining what was really happening, Karen discovered it on the shared family computer and deleted it. After that, she punished me by taking away my access to the washing machine. For 2 full weeks I washed baby clothes by hand like some Victorian-era laundress, scrubbing until my knuckles cracked and bled. About 2 weeks ago, David decided the gutters needed cleaning. He also decided that I should be the person responsible for doing the job. His exact explanation was that I needed to earn my place in the house. So I climbed up a shaky ladder and made it about 15 feet into the air before the entire thing shifted underneath me. I tried to grab the edge of the roof but missed and crashed down hard onto my left ankle. The pain exploded instantly, bright and sharp, like someone had hammered a nail straight through my foot. Karen heard my scream and came outside. She looked at my ankle, which had already swollen to the size of a grapefruit, and calmly told me I should simply walk it off. No doctor. No ice pack. Just walk it off. So I spent the next 2 weeks limping around the house, completing chores on an ankle that turned purple and yellow and made sounds that no healthy ankle should ever make. During all of this, I told absolutely no one what was happening. My father, Michael Reed, raised me on his own after my mother left when I was 7 years old. He spent his entire life working construction. He built houses, he built buildings, and in many ways he built the person I became. He always taught me to be strong, to be independent, and to never allow anyone to push me around. And yet there I was, letting myself be pushed straight into the ground. I could not bring myself to tell him. The shame alone would have destroyed me. But last Friday my dad decided to drive 200 miles to surprise his granddaughter for her unofficial 8-month birthday. He arrived just as I was limping across the lawn with Emma on my hip and grocery bags in my other hand. I had walked 2 miles to the store and 2 miles back because I no longer had a car. My ankle was throbbing so badly it felt like it was screaming, and my father noticed everything. He watched me struggle up the driveway and then asked where my car had gone. I told him that Ryan's mother had taken it and that I should probably feel lucky they even allowed me to stay there. My father's face cycled through about 7 different emotions in the span of 3 seconds. First confusion, then anger, then rage, then even more rage. Finally, an expression settled over him that frightened me more than anything else. Calm. Total and complete calm. The kind of calm that arrives right before a hurricane slams into the coastline. He opened the door of his truck and spoke 4 words that changed everything. He told me to get in the car because we were fixing this tonight. At that moment I did not know exactly what he meant, but the look in his eyes made one thing very clear. The Mitchell family had just created a very serious enemy, and Michael Reed was not a man who lost fights. Before we continue, if you are enjoying this story, please subscribe and let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you live. I read every single comment, and they truly make my day. Thank you very much for your support. Now let us return to what happened next. My father drove us to a small diner located 3 towns away. He explained that he did not want anyone reporting our movements back to the Mitchell family. At the time I assumed he was simply being overly cautious. Later I realized he was actually being strategic. From that moment forward, every move my dad made was calculated. After spending 35 years working in union construction, he knew exactly how to handle people who behaved like bullies. He told me over coffee that the Mitchells were running one of the oldest scams there is. That night I told him everything. Every humiliation. Every privilege that had quietly been taken from me. After 3 months of staying silent, the truth finally came out, rushing from me all at once, like water escaping from a cracked pipe. I explained how Ashley, Ryan's older sister, showed up almost every day. She never came to help. She came to observe and then report back to her mother. According to Ashley, I failed at everything. The dishes were never clean enough. The baby cried too often. I did not show enough gratitude for everything their generous family was supposedly doing for me. Ashley had never liked me. I came from a working-class background, and my father earned his living with his hands. In Ashley's world, that alone made me inferior. My dad listened without interrupting. When I told him that Karen had been monitoring my emails, I saw his knuckles turn white. I thought he might flip the table when I finished explaining, but instead he stayed calm and asked one steady question, asking what else I had not told Ryan. That was when I fell apart because the truth was simple and painful. I had told Ryan nothing. During every video call, his parents were in the room listening and watching. If I tried to send him an honest text message, they checked my phone afterward. I was completely cut off from my own husband, and it went further than that. Karen regularly called Ryan herself, using her own phone, enthusiastically describing how wonderful everything was. She told him how happy Susie seemed and how grateful I was. She painted a picture of me thriving. Ryan was stationed about 6,000 miles away, on a base with limited internet access. He had no reason to doubt his parents, so he believed everything she said. Then my father asked about the bank account. I told him David handled all of it. Every Monday I received $40, and that was the only money I ever saw. When Dad asked if I still had login access, I said I believed I did, although I had not tried since moving in. He smiled then, but it was not a warm smile. It was the kind of look a chess player gives when they see checkmate 3 moves ahead. He placed money on the table and said we were going to Kinko's. Kinko's at 11 at night felt strange. A man in a bathrobe was making copies of something I chose not to examine. Meanwhile, I sat down and logged into a bank account I had not opened in 3 months. At first, the numbers did not register. We should have had around $47,000. Ryan's military pay had been automatically deposited the entire time. There should have been more money in the account, not less. Instead, the screen showed $8,200. Nearly $39,000 were gone. Dad pulled up a chair and said we needed to check the transaction history. We printed page after page. The pattern was clear and disturbing. There were transfers to BB Holdings LLC totaling $15,000 over 3 months. I did not recognize the name until Dad searched it and found Ashley's Instagram boutique. She had been selling so-called healing crystals to unsuspecting women, stones that looked like they had been picked up from a parking lot after a rainstorm. There were no real customers to speak of, and apparently no concern about where the funding originated. There were also frequent cash withdrawals, sometimes $500, sometimes $300. The timing matched Karen's lifestyle exactly. Her twice-weekly salon visits, shopping trips to stores I could not even afford to enter, lunches with church acquaintances where humility was performed while designer handbags were compared, marina fees, and boat club memberships. David did not even own a boat, yet he enjoyed surrounding himself with people who did. He was using our money to support his imagined version of success. Then we looked at Ryan's credit card. There were restaurant charges, bar tabs, and golf fees. All local. All recent. All impossible for someone stationed in Germany. David had been using his own son's identity, while I was barely getting by in his garage. My father leaned back and said something I will never forget. He said he had seen mob accounting operations that were more subtle than this. He was right. The Mitchells had not even tried to conceal what they were doing. They were so certain I would never check that they left a trail obvious enough for anyone to follow. Dad was already calling someone. He had a friend, a retired paralegal named Laura Bennett, who owed him a favor. He decided to collect it that night because what the Mitchells had done was not just cruel, it was criminal. But before taking further action, we needed to reach Ryan directly, without his parents listening. Laura Bennett arrived at Kinko's around midnight wearing fuzzy pink slippers and a Michigan sweatshirt. She looked like someone's grandmother coming over to bake cookies, but she was not there for anything domestic. Within 5 minutes of reviewing our printouts, she identified 3 potential criminal charges: financial exploitation, fraud, and identity theft. Using Ryan's credit card without authorization was not only unethical, it was a federal crime. The military takes financial crimes against service members very seriously. She explained that the consequences could be severe, including significant prison time. However, there was a complication. When I first moved in, Karen had presented me with a stack of paperwork. She called them insurance forms and emergency contact documents. I had been exhausted with a 5-month-old baby who was not sleeping, and I signed whatever she placed in front of me. I never questioned it. One of those documents turned out to be a limited power of attorney granting David authority over financial decisions. That was how he had been added to our account. He had my signature on paper, even though I did not understand what I was signing. Laura asked whether I had signed willingly with full understanding, whether anyone had explained the document to me, and whether I had been given time to read it. The answer to all 3 questions was no. She noted that fraud can occur when consent is obtained through deception, and this situation might meet that standard. Dad then asked how we could reach Ryan directly without going through the Mitchell filter. Laura agreed that it was essential. If Ryan did not know what was happening, he needed to hear it from his wife first, not from attorneys or investigators. The challenge was that Ryan had limited internet time on base. Every phone number I had for him was also known to his parents. If I used normal channels, Karen would likely find out quickly. That was when Dad pulled out his old flip phone. He refuses to upgrade, insisting that smartphones are for people who do not have enough to occupy their minds. That night, however, that stubbornness helped us. He scrolled through contacts he had saved decades ago and stopped at a name: Sergeant First Class Daniel Harper, an old Army friend who now worked logistics at bases across Europe, including Ryan's base in Germany. Dad made the call right there at Kinko's. It was already after 6 in the morning in Germany. They greeted each other the way old soldiers do. Short, rough, a little profane and strangely affectionate. After that, Dad explained the situation. A message would be delivered. Ryan would receive instructions to call a number his parents did not know. It might take a full day, but the connection would happen. We walked out of Kinko's carrying a folder packed with printed evidence, and something I had not felt in months, hope. It was small and fragile, like a candle struggling in a hurricane, but it was real. Dad drove us to a motel. It was not a good one, the kind where the ice machine had probably been broken since the Clinton administration. But it was warm, and more importantly, it was not the Mitchell house. Emma fell asleep in my arms almost instantly. Babies sense tension. That night, with my father standing guard by the window, she slept more peacefully than she had in months. I could not sleep. I kept replaying the numbers in my mind. $15,000 sent to Ashley's crystal business. $8,000 in cash withdrawals that matched Karen's lifestyle. Thousands more supporting David's boat club fantasy. That money was supposed to be our future home. It was supposed to be our daughter's security. It was gone. The call came at 2 in the morning. An unknown number lit up Dad's flip phone. When I answered, I heard the voice I had been missing for 3 months. Ryan sounded confused. Someone he did not know had passed along an urgent message telling him to call this number. He asked if everything was okay and whether Emma was safe. I tried to respond calmly, but the tears came before I could stop them. 3 months of holding myself together collapsed in a single wave. When I could finally speak clearly, I told him everything. After I finished, there was silence. Long enough that I wondered if the connection had dropped. Long enough for a terrified part of me to question whether he would believe his parents instead of me. Then Ryan spoke, saying that he believed me, Samantha. He did not hesitate. He did not demand proof. He did not defend his family. He believed his wife. He had many questions, and after asking them, he told me what he intended to do. First thing in the morning, he would go directly to his commanding officer. Identity theft involving a military service member was taken extremely seriously. His parents had committed federal crimes, and he planned to ensure they face consequences. But he had another idea. His father's 60th birthday party was scheduled for Sunday. The entire extended Mitchell family would attend. Neighbors, business partners, church friends, everyone they had spent years impressing with their carefully crafted image of perfection. Ryan suggested making a surprise video call during the party to wish his father a happy birthday. He wondered what would happen if that call did not unfold the way David expected. I could hear the cold anger beneath his words. This was no longer only about justice. It was about exposure. About tearing away the mask in front of everyone. I told him I loved him. He told me he loved me too. Then he added something that made me smile for the first time in 3 months, saying that his father was about to experience the worst birthday of his life. Saturday morning felt different. The sunlight filtered through the cheap motel curtains as if the balance of things was finally shifting. Emma woke smiling, reaching for my face with her tiny hands, completely unaware that her mother was preparing for battle. Dad was already awake. I doubted he had slept at all. He had spent the night making calls, organizing what he called the infrastructure of justice. He had spent 35 years building things with his hands. Now he was building something else entirely. The Mitchells had no idea what they had awakened when they targeted Michael Reed's daughter. Ryan had been working too. Around 6 in the morning, shortly after meeting with his commanding officer, he called again. The military does not tolerate identity theft against its service members. Ryan explained everything, and his commanding officer listened with visible anger before connecting him with legal assistance immediately. Within hours, Ryan filed formal reports regarding the credit card fraud and unauthorized access to their accounts. Once military justice begins moving, it rarely stops easily. The first action he took was freezing every account, the joint savings, the checking account, the credit card, all of it. David would discover the change soon enough when his next restaurant charge failed in front of his golf companions. By then it would not matter. No more transfers to Ashley's crystal scheme. No more cash withdrawals supporting Karen's spending. No more boat club memberships fueling David's fantasy life. The financial bleeding had stopped. But that was only the beginning. Ryan wanted accountability, and he had a plan. His father's 60th birthday party was the next day. The entire Mitchell circle would be there. Neighbors from their upscale street, business associates dressed in expensive casual outfits, church friends bringing covered dishes. Everyone they had worked so hard to impress. Ryan intended to destroy that polished image in front of all of them. The video call was my suggestion. I would present it to Karen as a heartfelt surprise. She would love the idea of her military son appearing live from Germany to honor his father. She would arrange the large television in the living room, gather the guests for the emotional moment, perhaps even purchase a ring light to ensure perfect lighting. She would record it for memories. She would plan everything except what Ryan was actually going to say. Around noon, Laura came to the motel with updates. Her friend Sullivan, a retired financial crimes detective with 20 years of experience, had reviewed our documentation informally. According to him, there was more than enough evidence to justify a formal investigation. The deceptive power of attorney, the unauthorized withdrawals, the identity theft. These were not minor violations. They were felonies. Sullivan could not make arrests based solely on an informal review, but he could do something nearly as powerful. He could attend the party, visibly displaying his badge, and begin asking questions. The formal investigation would take time, but the public questioning could begin immediately. A detective appearing at David's 60th birthday celebration, asking about financial irregularities in front of neighbors and business associates, would send a message louder than any warrant. Dad carefully coordinated the timing. Sullivan would arrive roughly 30 minutes into Ryan's video call, right when the truth began to settle in, right when David and Karen were scrambling for explanations. That afternoon, Dad even practiced his harmless expression in the motel mirror. He kept asking whether he looked trustworthy, like a supportive grandfather simply standing by his daughter, rather than a man preparing to dismantle an entire reputation. I told him he looked convincing. He said I was a poor liar, but he appreciated the attempt. I would have to return to the house, face Karen, and pretend that nothing had changed. I would have to play the grateful daughter-in-law for one final day. The thought made my skin crawl, but if they suspected anything, they might cancel the party or attempt to destroy evidence. They needed to feel secure, confident, completely unprepared. Dad drove me back around 4 in the afternoon. Before stepping out of the car, I sent my father a message describing exactly where I had hidden my packed bag. It was in the garage behind the old paint cans, on the metal shelf near the lawn equipment. He would collect it the next day while everyone was distracted by the party. Walking back into that house was one of the most difficult things I have ever done. Karen greeted me at the door with her usual tight smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. She asked where I had been. I told her my father wanted some bonding time with his granddaughter. She looked irritated that I had left without asking permission, but she had too much party preparation on her mind to press the issue. I waited until she was busy arranging the centerpieces before saying anything else. Then I casually mentioned that Ryan had called my father's phone because mine had been acting up. I explained that he wanted to surprise his father with a video call during the party, and wished David a happy 60th birthday in front of all the guests. Karen lit up immediately. For a brief second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She began planning at once. The large television would be set up in the living room right after the cake cutting. She would make sure everyone gathered. She even reminded me that she had bought a ring light the previous month, saying it would be perfect for the occasion. She kept repeating how special it would be. I smiled and agreed, telling her it would absolutely be something people would remember. Sunday morning arrived beautiful. Blue skies. A light breeze. The kind of perfect temperature that makes everything look effortless. David's birthday celebration could not have asked for better weather. The catering team arrived early. A tent was set up in the backyard. Flowers covered nearly every surface. It looked more like a wedding than a birthday party. But David had never believed in doing anything small. At 8 in the morning, Karen handed me a list. 37 tasks to complete before the guests arrived. She spoke to me like I was hired help. Actually, less than hired help. At least hired help gets paid. I completed every task without complaint. The model daughter-in-law. Invisible. Guests began arriving around 2 in the afternoon. Business partners. Neighbors carrying expensive bottles of wine. Church friends bringing covered dishes. Ashley made her entrance wearing an outfit that likely cost more than my entire wardrobe, greeting her parents with exaggerated affection as if she had not seen them 2 days earlier. I watched them all. The same people who smiled at me during Christmas while I struggled in their friend's garage. The same people who believed Karen when she hinted that I was unstable. In just a few hours they would know the truth. David stood in the backyard receiving compliments about the party, the house, his successful life. He looked confident and completely secure at the center of what he believed was his perfect world. I wondered whether he would later look back at that moment and recognize it as the last time he ever felt truly happy. At 4 p.m, Karen announced that it was time for the video call. She invited everyone into the living room, proudly declaring that her military son was calling from Germany to wish his father a happy birthday. She said it was going to be very special. She was right about that. 53 people packed into the living room. I counted them. Counting gave me something to focus on besides my racing heart. Business partners positioned themselves at the front, eager to be visible. Church ladies clustered near the couch. Neighbors filled every empty space. David stood in the center, champagne raised, smiling like a man about to receive a medal he believed he had earned. Karen connected the call with dramatic enthusiasm. The television screen filled with Ryan's face. He wore his dress uniform, looking every bit the proud military son. The room erupted in applause. Someone whistled. David lifted his glass higher toward the screen. Ryan smiled. But there was something different about that smile. A coldness beneath the surface. I was probably the only one who noticed. I knew what was coming. He wished his father a happy birthday. His voice was calm and steady. Then he said he was glad everyone was present, because there were important things he needed to address. The room grew quiet, expecting a heartfelt tribute. Instead, Ryan began with the money. He spoke clearly and without emotion, laying out the facts like a prosecutor. $47,000, that was what he and his wife had saved for their future, for their first home, for their daughter's security. $8,200, that was what remained. Nearly $39,000 had disappeared while he was serving overseas. The room went silent. David's smile stiffened in place. Karen looked as if she had swallowed something rotten. $15,000 had been transferred to BB Holdings LLC. Ryan continued, identifying it as Ashley's company. The one selling crystals on Instagram. The one that apparently required his money to survive. Every head turned toward Ashley. The color drained from her face beneath her makeup. She looked to her parents for help. $8,000 in cash withdrawals followed, Ryan said, matching his mother's spending habits, her salon appointments, her shopping trips, her lunches with the church ladies. The church ladies shifted uneasily. A few appeared shocked. Others simply stared, unable to look away. David's business partners exchanged calculating glances. Ryan continued. He mentioned his credit card, which he had never authorized anyone to use. Restaurant charges, golf fees, bar tabs, all local, all made while he was stationed in Germany. He asked how that could be explained. David's expression shifted, from confidence to confusion, from confusion to anger, and finally to something unmistakable, fear. He opened his mouth, likely preparing an explanation. He never got the chance. The doorbell rang. Karen, moving automatically in hostess mode, answered it. Detective Sullivan stood on the porch with his badge visible. He apologized for interrupting the celebration, and explained that he was following up on a report concerning financial irregularities. He said he had questions for David and Karen, and suggested it would only take a few minutes unless they preferred continuing the conversation at the station. The room erupted into whispers. Business partners suddenly remembered urgent commitments. Church friends began whispering frantically. Neighbors edged toward the exits, not wanting to be associated with whatever was unfolding. Then Ryan's voice cut through the noise, stating that he was not finished. All 53 people stopped moving. The detective remained in the doorway, watching. Ryan began describing my reality, the garage, the cot beside the lawnmower, the $40 that was supposed to feed 2 people, the car taken away, the monitored phone, the deleted emails. He told them about the ladder in my ankle, about being ordered to walk off an injury that could have been a fracture. Then he spoke about the lies. The stories Karen spread about my mental health. The whispers that I was unstable. That I could not be trusted with my own baby. The deliberate campaign to ruin my reputation so that if I ever spoke up, no one would believe me. I watched expressions shift across the room. Church ladies who had believed Karen, who had likely repeated those stories themselves, now looked ill. Neighbors who had seen me limping and offered no help could not meet my eyes. They had all been misled. They had all participated without realizing it. Karen attempted to interrupt. She called it lies. Misunderstandings. She described me as a troubled girl inventing stories. But her voice trembled. The flawless composure she relied on was cracking. No one looked at her with sympathy anymore. They were staring at her as if seeing her clearly for the first time. David tried a different tactic. He turned toward his business partners and claimed it was a private family matter that had gotten out of control. He suggested it could be handled discreetly. One of his partners, a silver-haired man named Robert, asked a single, direct question. He asked whether David had used his son's credit card. David did not answer. His silence was an answer. Detective Sullivan calmly suggested that David and Karen accompany him to the station voluntarily. He said they could answer a few questions and clear up any misunderstandings. Ryan spoke one final time. He looked at me through the screen and told Samantha to take our daughter and leave with my father. He said he would come home as soon as possible and that he loved us both. Then he looked at his parents, the people who raised him, the people who had stolen from him, mistreated his wife, and lied to him for 3 months. He did not say goodbye. He did not repeat a birthday wish. He simply ended the call. The screen went dark, and David's perfect world seemed to darken with it. I walked toward the door where Dad was waiting. He had already retrieved my bag from behind the paint cans. Emma's car seat was secured in his truck. As I passed, Karen grabbed my arm. Her nails pressed into my skin. She whispered that I would regret this, that she had lawyers, connections, and people who owed her favors. I looked at her hand gripping my arm, then at her face, the woman who had made my life unbearable for 3 months, who had smiled while stealing my money, withholding food, leaving me cold, and isolating me from everyone who cared about me. I gave her a real smile, the first genuine one I had worn in that house. Then I told her I was not afraid of her. I pulled free and stepped into the sunlight. Behind me, Detective Sullivan began asking questions. David was stumbling over his words. Karen's voice was rising in panic as everything around her collapsed. I did not look back. Not once. I climbed into Dad's truck, secured Emma in her seat, and watched the Mitchell house shrink in the rearview mirror. The sky was painted orange and pink as the sun set, streaking across the horizon as if the world itself was marking the moment. The next several weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings and constant phone calls. But for the first time in months, every update felt like progress. 10 days after the party, David and Karen were formally charged with financial exploitation, fraud, and identity theft. As investigators dug deeper, additional charges were added. It turned out David had also been skimming smaller amounts from his business partners for years, amounts subtle enough to avoid notice individually, but significant in total. By the time everything was calculated, he faced both state and federal charges. His attorney advised him to prepare for serious prison time. Karen attempted to portray herself as a victim. She told anyone willing to listen that she knew nothing about the financial crimes. No one believed her. The evidence showed she had been directly involved. The cash withdrawals aligned with her shopping trips. The monitoring of communications had been her initiative. The lies about my mental health had originated with her. She was facing her own charges. Ashley's situation carried a strange irony. Her Instagram boutique had never been properly registered with the state. She had not paid taxes on the $15,000 transferred into her account. When investigators examined her business, they uncovered numerous violations. Her influencer ambitions ended the day the state tax authority demanded back payments and penalties. The last I heard, she had moved back in with her parents. The same parents now facing criminal charges, the same house at risk of seizure. Ryan received emergency leave 3 weeks after the party. When he walked through my father's door and saw Emma and me waiting, he broke down. This man who had endured combat training and overseas deployment finally allowed himself to cry. We held each other, the three of us. And in that moment I knew we would be all right. Not unchanged, but all right. I learned something important through all of this. My father had always said to keep a personal emergency fund. Money no one else could access. I wish I had listened more carefully. From now on, I will maintain savings in my own name. No shared accounts without clear boundaries. No signing documents without reading every word. Trust can be betrayed. The community response surprised me. I expected division. Instead, I received casseroles, cards, and phone calls from church ladies apologizing for believing Karen's stories. One neighbor brought a homemade pie and admitted through tears that she had seen me limping that day and almost offered help, but decided not to interfere. She said the decision had haunted her. I told her it was not her fault. The Mitchells had deceived everyone. The house went up for sale 2 months later. David needed funds for legal defense. I drove past once. The for sale sign looked misplaced in front of those grand columns. The lawn was overgrown. The gardens were tangled with weeds. The house that had been my prison was turning into an empty shell. I did not feel satisfaction. I felt closure. Ryan returned home permanently in early spring. He had been transferred to a base 2 hours from Dad's place. We started searching for houses again. Smaller than we had once imagined, but ours. No in-laws with spare keys. No shared accounts with extended family. No power of attorney ever again. The last time I saw Karen was during a court hearing. She appeared smaller than I remembered. The polished church lady persona had vanished, replaced by something exposed and frightened. She tried to catch my eye. I looked past her as though she were invisible. She no longer receives my attention. She receives nothing from me ever again. As I walked out of the courthouse, I held my husband's hand on one side and my father's on the other. Emma babbled happily in her carrier, unaware of everything that had happened. One day she will know this story. I will tell her that her mother found courage even when she did not feel courageous. That her grandfather drove 200 miles because something felt wrong. That her father chose to believe his wife when it mattered most. And I will teach her the most important lesson. You do not need permission to defend yourself. You do not need approval to demand respect. Anyone who tries to take your dignity does not deserve a place in your life. Not even family. Especially not family who would harm you. Some people mistake kindness for weakness. The Mitchell made that mistake. They believed that because I was polite and did not fight back immediately, they could do whatever they wanted. They learned otherwise. When you cross and read, you should be prepared for the consequences. Family protects family always. Thank you so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now and do not miss the best part. You're going to love it. See you in the next.